Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, 3 Data-Driven Ways to Power Marketing Campaigns. I'm very glad that you are all able to join us today. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Adam Corey. I head up marketing here at Tealium. And for those of you that don't know Tealium, Tealium is really the data hub for digital business, and we allow companies to better understand and universally engage their customers through better data. And what better a topic for today's conversation than to actually come up with a few ways that we can dive into working with data to make some initial quick wins that we can start on today. So really want to talk a bit about what I think many webinars that you probably attended before have really tried to get to, which is using data to better understand your customers. We certainly know that this is something that we need to do. We talk about mastering customer data quite often, but generally we're limited in what we can actually do for a various number of reasons. Sometimes that's based on the solutions that we're working with. Maybe they're not talking to one another, or we just don't have the implementation with those particular solutions to get the data that we need to send over to them. And in some cases, those solutions and channels that we engage our customers through don't necessarily have the ability to engage my customer when I want to engage them. So if a lot of the solutions that I use tend to leverage batch or delayed data, I can sometimes lose the opportunity to engage a customer in the moment. But when we think about what data really means, let's take a step back for a moment and think about what all these bits and bytes that go back and forth across our digital properties are actually about. They're really what is happening with our customers. If you think about just a simple web experience, it's our customers on the other end of their computers telling us what they want, what they're interested in, what they really care about. It's essentially them raising their hand, trying to tell you more about them. And so I like to think of this as really the language of our business. It really describes what our customers care about, what's most important to them, and it really describes our history with our customers, what motivates them, what our shared history is, what resonates with them from a marketing campaign or messaging standpoint, and what are their preferences? What do they care about? How can I better tailor my message, my business, my campaigns to better engage them? So our challenge with data is that most of us don't have the ability to engage in real time. And a little bit of a webinar snafu there. Sorry, we skipped ahead a few slides at once. But for most of us, we don't have a single platform that helps inform all of the channels that we want to engage our customers on. A great study that came out about a year ago really found that the minority of businesses today, just about 8%, really have a single platform that helps inform what they do across every touch point that they engage their customers on. And that means the rest of us, the other 92% of us out there that are trying to engage our customers, are at various stages, hopefully going towards that goal. Maybe we have a great system that helps inform our web content channel, but maybe not any others. Or maybe we're really good at email, but we don't really bridge the way that we engage our customers via email over to other channels that we have. So this is an area that I think we all can do a bit better in, can engage more, and really broaden the way that we engage our customers. So I'm going to start off with something that you guys have probably seen many, many times. It's the wonderful Chief MarTech landscape slide that Scott Brinker puts together about every year. And it shows us the number of companies that are engaging and working with brands like you on the phone. But another way to look at this is to look at the increase in number of companies that he's tracked over the last 5 or 6 years. It's really exploded to a little over 100 back in 2011 to almost 4,000 when he came out with that earlier this year. So these are thousands of companies that are brilliant at helping you engage your customers, but they're generally doing it from a campaign or a channel specific standpoint. Not all of them, but most of them are really focused on helping you solve how you engage your customers through one particular channel. So if I think about that, these companies can maybe help me engage via email better, or maybe through social channels better, or maybe on my website in a better way. But our customers really expect more. They don't really look at us as a brand with 10 different channels. They really look at us as one brand that should know them the same across every brand. So one other bit of data that I wanted to chat through today was a fascinating study that came out a little while back from MasterCard. For those of you that haven't looked at this before, I've included a link here in the slide. It's really fascinating just looking at a more macro standpoint across the US and really globally about how consumers are shopping. And while there were tons of findings in their study, a few of the things that stuck out to me were that consumers in the US are really shopping at fewer retailers. And while today's webinar is not focused exclusively on retail, I think if we take our marketer or our data hats off for a second and put our consumer hats on for a moment, this really starts to make sense. You know, we're all busy. We're generally shopping at places that we know and trust, and hopefully those places have everything that we need. We're not necessarily shopping around as much as we used to. Our expectations, as I mentioned earlier, for omni-channel or really the different ways that technology allows me to shop or allows me to engage with a brand are quite high. So I expect those to be met on the other end. We, again, with our shopper hats on, we're better informed than we used to be. We have just so much information at our fingertips that help us make informed buying decisions that we expect to be a little bit further along in our purchase behavior and in our education when we're ready to engage with a retailer or with a brand or company that we want to transact with. And another that was quite interesting is that omnichannel is really a simultaneous experience. So let's dig into a couple of these here. What I found really fascinating to get started off on is that loyalty is increasing with individual brands. We're actually shopping at fewer places. So the majority of us, in fact, choose to shop at fewer places than we did a few years ago. And the flip side to that is that when we look to foster loyalty as companies, we have to do that by knowing our customer and engaging our customer more. Because if I think about for a moment the ways in which a company might make sure that they're in that smaller select group of folks that are capturing more share of wallet, I'm probably doing that in part because of the relationship that I built with my customers. And I've done that by being more relevant to them, sharing deals and campaigns and products and offers that I have that are more relevant to them, and not doing something that is not relevant and not respectful of that relationship. So those that master that data are doing so probably at a rate of increased loyalty and engaging their customers in a better manner. Shoppers are smarter. They tend to have more information. So this not only raises the stakes for what I have to produce in my digital channels, but it means that as part of that loyalty, the expectations are higher as well. So I have to make sure that my end of the bargain is held up when I go to engage my customers. And the next one that was really fascinating was that omnichannel is really a simultaneous experience. So again, with our shopper hats on before we go into the next part of the webinar, this is something that I've certainly found myself doing is when I'm in a store looking to buy a TV or buying a car or any sort of a considered purchase, maybe buying an airline ticket or hotel, you know, if I'm in a store and I'm looking at something right in front of me, I'm probably on my phone comparing maybe prices or maybe just getting more information, getting shopper reviews, other things. When I'm purely in a digital mode, I'm most likely doing multiple things at the same time. I'm either comparison shopping, researching something else. There's more that's going on that's a part of that experience that's not just controlled by the brand itself. So for us, again, as taking off our shopper hats, putting back on our marketer and our data and our customer experience professionals, we have to do a much better job at leveraging data to be able to engage our customers and really make sure that we've earned that trust and respect in the relationship. So how do we do this? So as we mentioned today, we're going to dive into a few different ways that we can leverage data. But most important, our goal here should really be to define the data that's important to our business that describes that customer relationship and connecting that to places and the teams that I work with that can take action on that. One without the other is not going to help me. If I don't have great data in the first place, I'm not going to be able to engage. I don't really understand the relationship that I have with my customers, and I can't really act on it. And then the flip side of that, if I have great data and great insights, but I'm not actually connecting that to the places and the teams and the professionals on my team that can do something with that, I really haven't fulfilled. I haven't taken action on it. I haven't activated that data. So we're going to start with just a few definitions before we dive in. The first is just to level set on the types of data that are out there for us to work with. So we have first-party data. This is what I know about my customers. This is based on all of their transaction history, what they've clicked on my website, my CRM database, the things that I know. Then there's second-party data, which is typically data that might be shared privately between myself and another company to help me flesh out or get more detail on my customers. And then there's completely third-party data. So this might be data that I would use for top-of-the-funnel acquisition of people out there, maybe in an advertising scenario. For today's conversation, we're really going to focus on first-party data, since that's one of the most actionable sets of data, and quite honestly, it's one of the most unique sets of data that you have. This is something that your competitors don't have. You don't have the same relationship with your customers as your competitors, and you don't have the same history and relationship and data as your competitors do. So digging into first party a little bit more, I want to dive into three different types here. So we're going to talk a little bit about declared data, inferred data, and observed. So declared data is really what I've told you in the past as a consumer. Inferred data is what you think of me based on my behavior. And observed data is really what you know of me based on my past behavior. So let's talk a little bit about this. So there's my face again. Let's talk a little bit about how I'll put a retail scenario in here for a moment, but how I might think about different data based on my behavior. So if I've gone through a shopping experience or I've set up my account or filled out a form, I might have declared certain things about me. I might have said gender equals male, or when I'm putting in my name, I might say Mr. Adam Corey. I'm not that formal, so generally I don't say Mr. But if I've done one of those things, that is me declaring something about myself that you can act on. The others are really based on things that I've done. So I browse a certain section of the site, which may or may not tell you that I am a male, but it may infer that I'm interested in buying clothes for men. Or if I always purchase in the same content category or product category, that's telling you, again, maybe not something about my gender, but it's probably telling you something about my preference in the way that I want to transact or the types of products that I care about. And this exists really everywhere. So as we think about one of the first steps of things that we need to do as brands, as marketers, and as data professionals, we need to get our data together. Our first step to be a more data-driven organization is to, quite simply, get the data that we need to drive our campaigns forward. So this is not a boil the ocean step number one, but this is taking some bite-sized chunks of data, and maybe it's just one set of data that I can work with today, one attribute that can help me add some dimensionality to the way that I engage my customers. I think we often think about this as a rather complex thing, but if we want to start off by learning more about our customers, one of the things that we can do is to ask. So if it's important to me to understand something about my customers, why are they on my website today? What are they looking for? Are they looking to buy? Are they looking to research? Are they looking to talk to somebody? This can be a really interesting way that on my website, I can start off with a simple question, not a survey, not a big research project, but it really can be a way that I can ask a simple question to say, hey, how can I help you? Or what types of clothes are you interested in? Certainly I can observe this data and I can infer based on their behavior as well. But if I really want to know about what someone really cares about, I can ask the question. Again, I want to ask this in a way that's a seamless experience that doesn't interrupt the conversion or experience flows, but I can start off by getting one piece of information that will then help me better inform my retargeting programs, my email targeting programs, et cetera, by knowing a bit more about what someone cares about today. Now, if that's not something I want to do today, if it's not something that I can do today, perhaps because I can't just launch something on my website, then we want to look at what we can learn about our web visitors or our mobile visitors by things that they're already doing. And this is sometimes just tied to common sense, but we're going to go through a couple of scenarios here. The first will be, again, from my own world, which is I'm buying an airline ticket. So this is a process that, again, for an airline that looks at what I'm doing, one of the things that they might do when they get started is to say, did Adam purchase this or not? If he didn't, then I'm probably going to retarget him to get him to purchase this. And I'm going to take some of those attributes and say, hey, Adam's trying to get from point A to point B, so let me go ahead and retarget him with fares for point B. We've all seen this when we go to retailers and I look at a shoe and then I see that shoe all over the web for the rest of my life trying to buy that same shoe. This is a pretty common tactic. But let's see where we can add a bit more context to dig in a bit deeper into that relationship. Because certainly Adam flying from San Diego to Sydney is what's important right now. But what can I learn about Adam that's maybe a bit more central to either what he cares about for this trip or what he cares about more generally? So let's see about actions that I might do. So this can exist in several different places, but I can certainly look at sorting through of price options, fare options to learn more about an individual. So perhaps if I am sorting from lowest to highest prices for this particular fare, that might be something that tells me what I care about from how much money I want to spend. If I'm really not looking to spend a lot of money, then this is something that is going to describe what Adam cares about. On the flip side of that, if I care about booking a refundable ticket, in this case, maybe I value my time over money. And so in that case, that could help inform the types of engagement and the types of messaging that I might want to engage this particular user on. The next is really to expand our retargeting efforts. So this is where, as we were talking about just a moment ago, we typically think about retargeting efforts as something that is really focused on one particular action in the moment. I want to get that one conversion back. So in that case, I take the example of the shoe or the destination I was trying to reach. If I'm just looking at getting someone engaged to make that one purchase, that's great. But maybe there's an option for me to be able to engage people beyond that. So this is where I can broaden and expand my retargeting efforts to think beyond just the product-specific or abandonment programs. So in this case, I could leverage the category interest. What category does Adam typically shop in? What attributes does he particularly care about? Maybe this is a case where if I looked at price sensitivity based on my sort options from a moment ago, that could help me understand what I care about. And then this can also help me promote more cross-sell or category-wide options for somebody. So outside of trying to get this one conversion, I can expand my retargeting into even a two-tiered approach. The first tier could certainly be focused on getting that initial conversion. Hey, Adam needs to book this flight to Australia. The second phase of that, if Adam either doesn't engage or maybe that window for that particular retargeting program has ended, but now I want to engage Adam based on some of the price sensitivity or based on the price flexibility that he might care about based on what his behavior has exhibited previously on my website. So one other example here, which I think is going a little bit further in the hospitality area, is something that's quite straightforward from the way that I might be searching between a room for one person or a room for two people. Now, typically I travel for business a lot, so that's going to be one adult in the room. But as soon as I start to change that search criteria, look at multiple rooms, look at multiple people in a room, now I'm switching my mode from maybe more business, inferring that Adam is on a business trip, to Adam's now looking at maybe a romantic getaway, a family vacation, a holiday in general. So maybe I'd want to change the way that I engage Adam based on that behavior, not just the, hey, you're looking for a hotel in this area. Great, let's look at both. So a two-tiered or expanded retargeting efforts can help to engage me as a consumer, knowing a bit more about what I care about. And these really exist across the board. And the third area that we want to dive into here is looking at how we can engage in multiple channels. And this is often one of the most overlooked areas that exist out there in the way that I retarget or re-engage people or act on data. So if we think, again, going back to the retargeting efforts that we typically do, I generally pixel one particular part of my site based on either products or abandonment or something else, and then I engage maybe just in display or maybe just in social, or maybe I take that data and target people just via email. In this case, what we want to do is look at how I can holistically engage the consumer across all of those channels with the same data and the same up-to-date information that I care about. So this is an example here from Ancestry. It's a great example, although some of their creative is a bit old, so I hope they don't mind that I took this snapshot a little while ago. But it's a great example of taking one message that exists across 4 different types of channels, 1 being through email, 2 being display either on their website or off on third-party sites, more traditional advertising, and the last via social. So all with the same understanding of this is someone who has exhibited some interest in joining the service. They've potentially started off building their profile so they know a bit about their family tree, or their family tree has started to be developed. But I think this is a great example of using the medium to describe and use this messaging in a very different way to engage the customer. Because as we remember, on the flip side, when we put our shopper hats on or our consumer hats on for a moment, as consumers, we don't see that there's necessarily different channels that I'm engaging with a particular brand. I really just see one particular brand. And in this case, I think Ancestry's done a fantastic job of looking at the right medium and leveraging the right creative and really how far along they are in the relationship they have with their customer on that particular channel to engage and bring someone through. So when we think about bringing together 2 different channels, so email and Facebook custom audiences or display audiences or really any social site, these 2 are really well designed together because, again, I know the person on the other end, either because I can match up between my email address that I have for that person via both my email system and the social network or other attributes. What's great about both email and Facebook, for example, is that I can use a common key or I can use the same identifier to universally engage across both. Now, there's certainly more that I can do when I want to engage across display and beyond. But if we think about just these 2 examples for a moment, they're really both designed to help me move the story forward from a content-centric standpoint. And this really allows me to expand my reach as well. So if you look here at the chart on the right, this is a great example from eMarketer looking at data over the last couple of years and forecasting into the future of the amount of time that consumers and adults in the U.S. spend just on Facebook. And really, this is on a daily basis, we're spending a lot of time. We're spending 20 plus minutes as an average adult just on Facebook. And that's not including Instagram and certainly not including Twitter, et cetera. And this is across both desktop, or laptop, as well as mobile. So if you think about this and you compare that to maybe an email that I might send out to somebody for, again, a retargeting or an engagement campaign that I might have, if I'm sending out an email to somebody, hopefully I get them to click to open up that email and hopefully I get them to read what's in there. But if I think about how long someone is actually scanning and reading that email, I really just have a few seconds for them to engage with that email. And if I think about, for those of you who have worked in email marketing in the past, or maybe your neighbor in your office has, talk to them a bit about how many times it makes sense for you to, in an average week or an average month, to send out an email to your audience. And you then realize that the few seconds that you have to engage someone in one particular email is really all you have maybe every few days or a few times a month. Now compare that to the amount of time spent on Facebook and social and other channels, and now you see that I can turn what was a few seconds into several minutes of possible engagement time. So if I match up how I'm trying to engage my consumer, I can quite simply take my engagement programs that I have in email and pair them with social. It doesn't mean that I'm going to get a 100% crossover, because not everyone in my email database is also on Facebook or also on Facebook today. But for those that are, it does expand my reach. And I can take the data and segments and attributes that I've built about my consumers for email, I can expand that into Facebook. And there's a great study that I'll link to later on in the presentation that looked at this for a large US retailer and found that by combining email and just Facebook, so just 2 channels together, yielded 22% more conversion. And if you think about that, that's first off a fantastic increase right off the bat. But if you think about this as a consumer for a moment, this makes a ton of sense. If I saw an email, or maybe I didn't see an email, or maybe just saw the subject line or who it was from, and I knew this is from a brand that maybe I had engaged with, but I didn't have time. I was running late to the office, or I was skimming through. I didn't really engage with that via email. But then later on, when I have a bit more breathing room and I'm looking through Facebook, I'm maybe leaning back a bit, enjoying the day, I see that same message perhaps presented in a different way. Again, think back to what Ancestry did. It's not the exact one-to-one message, but it's certainly using information about me as a consumer, what I care about, what I've expressed interest in. Now I'm perhaps more ready to engage with that particular brand. And in this case, it certainly showed up in the data as well, that people not only engaged at a higher rate, but they also converted at a higher rate. So to wrap up today's webinar, and then we'll go into some of the summaries here in a moment, our mission really here at Tealium is to help on this front, to help build a common data layer that can help fuel the experience layer, the campaign layer across the board, and really allowing you to build a universal approach to working with your data, not only with your vendors and your campaigns, but really inside of your organization to build what we like to call a data supply chain, so that everyone in your organization, from the analytics team to the CRM team to the people that work more on the execution standpoint from a campaign perspective, your display team, email, et cetera, they can all work and take part in building the understanding of who individuals are that I'm trying to engage and share that data together. And if you think about that, that's really what we're all about. If my email team works separately from my social team and they don't work together, well, heck, I've lost that 22% possible conversion lift that I could have gained if I got those two teams or those two channels working together. And so that's really our mission here at Tealium, is to help brands and businesses work and engage more universally inside and outside of their organizations. And this follows through not just in retail, but certainly in financial services, in other ways that I'm trying to engage people, again, beyond just one particular transaction and getting people to come over and do that one particular purchase. If someone is browsing my website, browsing information on a mortgage or insurance products that I have, what can I learn about them that's going to help me better provide more relevant content to them along the line? So here, if we think about what this looks like and the types of channels that we can bring together, this involves not only my campaign vendors and my execution teams, but also my data teams together. My experience data sources, which are all the channels that I engage my customers on, my web apps, in-store, my Internet of Things, wearable devices, as well as my traditional digital properties, as well as any other metadata sources that help me understand who somebody is. And so during today's webinar, we really just talked about 3 things that I can do to take action on today, but these should really be a part of a longer-term approach that we have to start to chip away at working together as a team across not just marketing or not just one particular part of marketing, but really more holistically across the organization, so that I can engage my customers across any channel. And I threw in the example of the Apple Watch here today, not just because it exists as a new channel to potentially engage customers on, for those of you that have started to build or dabble with the idea of mobile applications that sit outside of a mobile phone, but this really underscores the importance of thinking about data more holistically, as opposed to trying to solve this at the campaign or the channel specific level. If I build a campaign strategy around how people engage with my Apple Watch, well, that's not really helpful in any other channel. So I really should think about what I learn from people engaging with my Apple Watch app or my mobile website or any other digital property or in-store property that I have. What can I learn from those channels that help me understand who that person is across the board? So that way I can inform any of the vendors and channels and teams that I work with down the line. This then, if you think about it, allows me to engage my consumer really regardless of the devices that he or she may choose across the board. So if I look at how one particular consumer chooses to act, maybe they tend to browse on desktop but convert on mobile, I can then build programs that really map to a more channel neutral customer journey that allows the customer to then choose what solutions and what channels work best for them to transact, as opposed to relying on just what I've built internally. So when I have a more holistic understanding of who somebody is, and I'm sharing that information across my teams and therefore with the tools that they're using, it doesn't really matter if this particular consumer chooses to interact with my email or chooses to interact with my brand on Facebook or mobile or Apple Watch, because the data flows and there's a data supply chain that unites all of these together from both a customer profile as well as from an action strategy. I can then really engage that customer on whatever terms he or she chooses today, as well as whatever happens and changes in the future. So in summary, the four things, although for some reason on this slide here, they're all the number one, is to define your action-ready data. So let's figure out what data you can take already that's either declared, inferred, or observed that you have, and then ask questions either directly to your consumer to fill in the gaps there, or look at your experience and find out other ways that you can start to infer more information about what your consumer cares about, so that you can then get on to our third bullet point here, which is to broaden the way that I'm retargeting. That goes, instead of a one-step conversion-centric approach, to maybe a two-step approach that engages that customer more holistically based on what he or she cares about. And then in the last part, really make sure that we broaden what's working in one channel and what I recommended, which is email. Let's broaden that from just one channel or just email, and let's make sure that we engage those exact same consumers on social and beyond. So that way I can not only hedge my bet from a marketing standpoint, but I can really allow the consumer to flow more fluidly between the channels that he or she cares about, and I'm ready to engage them and convert them, hopefully, regardless of what channel that they choose. And so with that, I'd really like to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. I'll send out a follow-up email today, but please, if you have any questions or would like to take the conversation forward, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again.